And a very happy Thursday to you at 12:07 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's across the glass.
John, as you know, I listen to a lot of LA City Council meetings. I also listen to a lot of LA City Council committee hearings. And what do you know? The gadflies show up there, too, for public comment. Our favorite gadfly is a man who goes by the name 3-Inch Shrimp, and he had quite a mouthful to say at the public safety meeting.
So Sergeant Duarte taught me that metro transportation is not a bathroom.
Well, I'm glad he cleared that up.
Metro bus, metro train is not a toilet. So you cannot just sleep on the train, sleep on the bus for several hours, several days, or maybe you just go there, pee and poo anytime you want, and then when you call LAPD, taking them 20 minutes, 30 minutes to arrive, that's not acceptable.
Well, if Javier Baccaria wants to scrub everything, maybe he can run the MTA.
Scrub it.
I could not stop thinking about him yesterday.
So Alex Michelson tweeted out the interview that he conducted that we played on yesterday's program with Javier Baccaria, and you should have seen the reaction to it online. Pretty much everyone reacted the same way as us.
He may be the most unimpressive person running for governor right now. He has zero ideas, but he does have a very strange catchphrase.
Scrub it.
I got the impression he didn't even read the paper before he went in there for the interview. He was totally clueless.
In fact, yesterday at a press conference, Gavin Newsom was asked about Javier Baccaria getting into the race. You want to hear what he had to say?
Let's hear it.
Harris could still enter that mix.
And you'll forgive me. I feel like Jerry Brown must have felt. You know, I'm just at that point where I don't want to talk about these things. I really don't. I haven't focused on them. Someone literally texted me some article. I didn't even read it. So I am aware because it was early morning text, and I didn't even open it up. It's just not my focus. It really hasn't been. And
I'm sure he saw that text, said, not that jackass.
It's just not my focus. It really hasn't been. And forgive me, it's like, this is not a professional thing to say. It's like more personal. It's a strain. It'd be like me talking about a year and a half, your place. Hey, this is a hotshot young reporter out there coming from Atlanta. What do you think of him? Or she's someone who really broke through in Dallas. What are your thoughts? And are you worried about, Katie Couric coming back and taking your job? So I say all this with love. We'll have plenty of time to deal with this next year. Start asking me next year. Thanks.
I'll tell you, Javier Baccaria was so bad yesterday that he makes Gavin Newsom look informed and competent and engaged and on top of it. And I never thought those words would come out of my mouth.
It's the scary thing about 2026. As horrible as 8 years of Gavin have been, to see the contenders who are running to replace him next year, it might get a whole lot worse.
Scrub it.
They don't even have the slightest bit of interest in the subject matter. They don't care.
They all see this as a stepping stone job or something you got to check off on the resume, but there are very few people running that actually want to fix the state of California.
Think about this. We're going to get a new governor who doesn't care about state issues, and we're going to have an absentee landlord for the next 2 years who's running for president. We're not going to have anyone effectively running the state for 8 years. Gavin, of course, is busy with his podcast right now. He can't be bothered with governing the state of California.
And what do you know? Every time he actually steps out to do his job, all the questions are about his podcast.
I'm sure.
Ashley Zavala of KCRA3 asked Gavin at this presser if he's going to be governing differently because the views that he expresses on his podcast are different than the things he does as governor.
Difficult.
Already didn't want to answer that one.
Difficult to make that determination.
That's all, folks.
Difficult to make that determination. I spent an hour a week on this.
Oh, and if you're wondering why I don't have the question, it's because it was windy and they don't mic the reporters on purpose.
Can't hear anything.
I spent an hour a week on this.
You spent a little more time than that. There's the prep. There is the getting to the location, promoting the podcast, spending all day on Twitter, retweeting people talking about the podcast.
We still don't know where the money's going because he has a deal with iHeart, doesn't he?
That comes up later in the interview.
I think I have a conversation tomorrow with someone, and conversation takes many different forms, shapes. Sometimes what you expect will be discussed. Sometimes things come up that are off topic, that become topical. But it's not an agenda-setting effort. I'm not trying to legislate from that prism using this platform.
Then what are you doing it for?
Well, and it also goes to show you how disingenuous he is. Because if his actual position on an issue is different than his publicly stated position, what the hell?
That's the work I do as governor. To the extent it crosses over, you talk to...
This is just a character I play on the podcast. Oh, the good old hacky radio days where people love to say that.
And Ezra Klein, and he's talking about this framework of abundance, and he's talking about litigation and CEQA and NEPA and Reagan and Nixon and that crossover around high-speed rail and other things, housing, supply and bound.
He's turning this into a promo for his podcast and the episode that made him look the worst.
He wants the downloads.
Supply and bound, that obviously crosses over.
He's updating his phone, checking that charts on Apple Podcasts, seeing if he's going up.
Supply and bound, that obviously crosses over quite nicely, the work we're doing. Was highlighted, and I appreciate Buffy Wicks and the 20-plus bills she introduced, was highlighted and underscored in the conversation that we had of I think, her sort of renewed enthusiasm, of my enthusiasm in this space, which has been well established as it relates to judicial review and some of the reforms we made over the course of the last many years. So,
which have had zero effect on the state.
Zero.
I think component parts, but I want to overread it because I have so-and-so on. This is some new agenda. It's what I said it was going to be, which is opportunity to have conversations with people that I agree with and disagree with, to have the kind of conversations that I have in private, but to make them public, to be even more transparent in that process. And to the extent that big ideas come from private conversations I have, and they can be incorporated into policy making, I think it would be wonderful if those public conversations generated an idea or two as well. But that, again, is not the intention of the podcast.
Sure it isn't.
So here's what's interesting. He's essentially treating questions about the podcast as if it's distracting. Well, if the podcast is distracting you from your daily job, why are you doing it?
He likes the attention.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just to hear it from you, you're not being compensated at all for this, no financial gain.
I have to translate once again because God forbid they hand Ashley Zavala a microphone. She wants him to clarify that he's not financially gaining at all from this podcast that is produced by iHeartRadio.
No, and it's the exact same format as the prior one. And we had all those fancy attorneys figure all that.
Prior one. The first time he admitted he's not doing the Marchand show anymore.
Yeah, how did that one get canceled?
And we had all those fancy.
Well, because he wasn't getting any attention from it.
No, we were the only ones listening to that one.
And Ashley Zavala.
And we had all those fancy attorneys figure all that out, and it's all transparent on the 700 form and all that. So it's not a dollar. In fact, this has cost me money, but that's another conversation. Yeah, no, geez, okay.
Well, he might not be personally profiting from this podcast. As far as I know, he's not doing any live reads for it. He did do live reads on the Marchand podcast for some mental health company. I would assume he doesn't get a talent fee, but I don't know. However, Gavin and this company have had a weird, cozy relationship because during COVID, when Gavin was spending a ridiculous amount of money on PSAs to cover your face and get the jab and everything else, most of that money got funneled to iHeartRadio.
I wonder who their lobbyist is. I bet you there is a lobbyist for that company who is close to Gavin, and that's where this relationship came from.
Oh, yeah, because there was a lot of state money that went to fill up the ad time on those radio stations throughout the state.
I'll tell you, in this state, people get rich off of public service. He's doing a podcast. God knows what kind of plans he has in the future in professional broadcasting. Nancy Pelosi, how much money has she made on the stock market since being elected to Congress?
You got to follow Nancy's stock ticker on Twitter. You'll make a mint.
Karen, why are you doing this?
Oh, you do that, you'll end up with a villa in France. Gavin was also asked about the trans sports bill that we talked about yesterday with Assemblyman David Tongipa.
Trans athletes from playing in those sports.
Well, I didn't pay any attention to the committee yesterday. I was literally spent most of the day talking about LA fire recovery with our teams.
I'm too busy to find out what the legislature's doing on something that I made national headlines about.
Who's got time for that?
Well, I didn't pay any attention to the committee yesterday. I was literally spent most of the day talking about LA fire recovery with our teams.
Not Karen Bass, though.
I love the fact that the legislature meeting about a subject that made national news involving him is treated as if it's just something that's an irrelevant sideshow.
And progress is being made there, by the way, but we're starting to run up into some of those abundance conversations around permitting that's already starting to take shape.
Oh, you mean how, like, there's only been a handful of permits that have been handed out in the Palisades?
What's the number at now? 4?
Where most of my focus was yesterday. As it relates to that issue, my position is, I think, known. And that issue came to the fore with me on multiple occasions as governor. Came right into the office. We had a state track meet where there were 2 athletes that got into the finals. And because of,
Someone's nervous.
Well, he knows he's going to catch all kinds of hell from the left if he comes down too hard on the side of keeping trans athletes out of women's sports.
Because people's reaction to that, they ended up not playing in the finals. And so you had 2 folks that didn't get in, 2 folks that did, no one playing. We tried to figure out how to balance this. Is there a way to make this work? We worked with experts. We literally were talking to some of the International Olympic Committee experts. We talked to our own state experts. We were trying to figure this out and couldn't figure it out. And that's my point of view, that I just couldn't figure out how to, quote unquote, make this fair.
The answer from the governor? I don't know what the answer is.
Well, keep in mind, the fact that he put his actual position out on this subject that goes against Democratic orthodoxy is not meant for the consumption of California Democrats. It's especially not meant for the California legislature. It's meant for voters in Michigan and Arizona and Nevada and Pennsylvania for when he runs for governor and he can say, I'm the most electable candidate in the Democratic field.
Because if you take the legislature at their word from what happened in that committee hearing, you could argue that Rick Chavez-Burr called Gavin Newsom a Nazi.
He did.
That said, I don't know there's a bigger champion for LGBTQ rights.
How about the IA Plus, Gavin? You don't even talk about them.
They got edited out.
As an executive in the country. And I mean that. That's done more over the course of decades than I have. And so I'm deeply sensitive and empathetic to the community. And I can't stand those that demean the community and bully the community, talk down and use this to weaponize a political agenda. And I made that point. I said, you can hold both things in your hand in terms of the statement that
I'm not saving that.
You know you want to.
I'm not doing it. I don't want to get us in trouble.
That's probably for the best.
In terms of the statement that I made on this at the time. And I continue to make that point. And so I'm looking just for empathy. These kids just want to survive. And so the question you're asking.
Yeah, but it's also, as you said on your own podcast, deeply unfair to the women competing.
Yeah, and what does all of this have to do with the price of tea in China? He was asked a very easy to understand question, And now he's taken left turns here and right turns there. And are you in any way understanding what he's saying?
Oh, I know exactly what he's doing. What Gavin Newsom is doing is giving a long, meandering answer that doesn't have a soundbite. He does this a lot because he knows if he gives a long, weird, strange answer like this, there's nothing the local news can clip out of it. Very few shows do what we're actually doing and playing the whole press conference. So most people won't know what he said on this subject.
And so the question you're asking is the question we've been asking ourselves for months and haven't been able to answer. What is that finally? How can you make this fair? And I haven't been able to figure it out. And I'm about as transparent about this as anybody out there, particularly in my party, on this. And to the extent someone can and do it in a way that's respectful and responsible and could find the kind of balance.
This is just too complicated. We don't know how to fix this problem.
He's acting as if this is some kind of Rubik's Cube that can't be solved.
It's either fair or it's unfair.
Then I'm open to that discussion. That said, this is not where all my energy flows.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, we're going on the road next week.
How exciting is this? It's a week from tomorrow when we go back to Long Beach. Last November, we did this huge live remote at Gladstone's Long Beach, and it was so much fun that we knew we had to do it again. So we're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of Gladstone's Long Beach and the 50th anniversary of the Long Beach Grand Prix. Join us Friday, April 11th from noon to 3 for Fan Free Friday. We'll be broadcasting live from the beautiful patio right on the Rainbow Harbor in Long Beach. It's gorgeous. The view is amazing, and so is the food. And if you've never been to one of our live events, it's so much fun because you're going to make a whole bunch of new friends, all the people that listen to this show. Gladstone's Long Beach is a great location for a date night, a delicious get-together with friends, a sunset cocktail, family meals, and celebrations. They're located directly across from the Pike Shopping Center. Make a reservation and join us a week from tomorrow.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you missed yesterday's program where we played the sound of Javier Bacaria's bonkers interview with Alex Michelson, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can also go to one of our radio station websites. Go to kabc.com or ksfo.com and get them all right there. And the great thing about a podcast is you can listen to them anywhere. You can listen to them when you're working. You can listen to them when you're at the gym. You can listen to them when you're driving. You can even listen to them when you're in the tub.
Scrub it.
All right, let's go back to Gavin Newsom. He may not be dotting his I's, but he's certainly crossing the T's.
That's good. Gavin was asked about the pushback he's received from members of the California legislature, especially the LGBTQIA caucus. Excuse me, I forgot the plus.
You made some interesting comments to the LA Times in relation to the kind of pushback that you got from those comments, saying that you felt like you understood more than ever some of the right-wing criticisms of how Democrats have handled disagreements around this issue. And that came also a few days after your interview with Bill Maher, where you mentioned feeling like people had tried to cancel you. And I'm wondering what...
Well, I don't know about anyone canceling. That has nothing to do with... Well, let me answer the question.
You wouldn't even let him finish the question.
Oh, no, he's jumping right in there. Now that he's a broadcaster, he thinks he knows better than them.
Well, I don't know about it.
We got to keep this thing on time, Gavin.
Well, I don't know about anyone canceling. That has nothing to do with... Well, let me answer the question. Specific. It's broader than that. I think it goes to the broader issue of having conversations with people you disagree with. That's fundamentally what those comments were about. And it's been difficult. It's difficult for some people. Certain people just aren't interested in having conversations with other people, and they have strong opinions about that.
Are you interested with having conversations with California journalists one-on-one?
Of course not.
And they have strong opinions about that, And so good people can disagree. And, yeah, people have strong opinions and have expressed that in dismissive ways. And so I reflected on that. And I do have a bigger understanding. I mean, people don't like being talked down to or passed. People, the world of, and not from a gender perspective, this notion of everything's binary. it's this or that. And there's nuance in the world. And I think it's important to have space of nuance. And I'm trying to find that. That's why I'm doing this podcast. And
that's not why.
No, he's trying to position himself in the center so he can sell himself as the most electable Democrat for president.
I'm trying to find that. That's why I'm doing this podcast. And obviously it struck a chord because we're still having this conversation.
Well, because you said that you agreed with a policy that is wildly different from how you've governed.
And the Democrats in the state legislature just saved him, because if that legislation would have passed, then Newsom would have to either sign it or veto it. But because the legislation failed in committee, he won't have to officially go on the record.
Obviously, it struck a chord because we're still having this conversation. But I think it's important to have difficult conversations, or even have a civil conversation that may be difficult for people to listen to, because everybody's out there trying to tear each other down. And there's plenty of play. The world is polluted with that. Social media is polluted with that. I offer no value in that space. I'm not trying to tear everybody down. Why am I back in the Central Valley? Because I don't like the way people talk about the Central Valley.
Wait, you're the one that throws them under the bus all the time. Whenever people complain about crime in L.A. or San Francisco or Oakland, he always dumps all over Bakersfield and says Bakersfield is the murder capital of California.
I don't like the way people talk down to the folks out in the Central Valley.
Unless I'm doing it.
I made that point on Bill Maher, too.
Well, that was more about the criticism of the high-speed rail, which is a weird thing to be, oh, no, you don't like the high-speed rail, you don't like the Central Valley. The high-speed rail doesn't exist.
It's theoretical.
I don't like people talking past these folks. So I keep coming back to make a point. It's consistent with what I've done all my life. I mean, I remember I married a big Republican family. I don't know how many times I said that. But I don't know if people pay attention to that.
Oh, we know that you pay attention to it. Father-in-law likes to text him what's going on with Jesse Waters.
When he's not writing checks to Ron DeSantis.
What does that mean? That means I love and respect people I politically disagree with. And so for me, having conversations with people I disagree with is consistent with that. Heck, I spend almost, 3 hours in the Oval Office with President Trump. We're engaged in, constant battle of ideas and values, lawsuits, another one we filed yesterday. So, that's the approach. And, there's some strong opinions there, and I was reflecting on those.
I wish I could have been a fly on the wall when he met with Trump begging for money. Because it went on for a long time. And those two, despite their public posturing, like one another. Because Gavin Newsom is a guy who made friends with the Gettys when he was a very young man because he knew the Gettys could do something for him. He values wealth. He married into a very wealthy family. He himself may not be rich, but he surrounds himself with rich people because that's something he likes. He likes to be around it. Donald Trump likes good-looking people who are successful. And Gavin Newsom may not be a successful governor, but was able to get elected governor, was able to get elected mayor of San Francisco 2 times, has beautiful wives. I mean, let's face it, Don Jr. ended up dating Gavin's ex.
I'm sure they talked about that.
Oh, I'm sure that subject came up. But if it weren't political and they weren't on opposite sides of the political fence, my guess is those two would be friends. If Donald Trump was a developer and had properties in California, I bet you he would have been a contributor to Gavin Newsom, and I bet you Gavin Newsom would have liked him. From the point of view of selling himself to national Democrats, Newsom can't acknowledge that. He can't look like he is a friend of Trump's or fond of Trump, even though he is, or I believe he is. And for Donald Trump, Gavin is a great punching bag because the state of California is a basket case. And he just ran against Kamala Harris, who came from California, and putting California in the spotlight was in part how he beat Kamala Harris.
Okay, how much of that meeting was dedicated to her?
Oh, a huge part. And I bet you I bet you Newsom trashed her more than Trump did.
Oh, yeah.
Well, just when you thought you've heard it all, when it comes to stunting in political campaigns, where you had John Cox with the bear, that was something. You had Javier Baccarillo with all the scrubbing.
Man does love a good scrub.
But when you do the scrub.
And now we have a former member of the California state legislature who ran for Congress and lost. And there was some stunting that took place in that campaign that resulted in what could be described as a questionable expenditure.
Evan Lowe is getting fined for violating campaign finance laws for a really silly reason. For more, here's NBC Bay Area.
The serious allegations and now a harsh penalty for former state assemblyman Evan Lowe. The State Political Practice Commission has now fined the former South Bay lawmaker more than $100,000.
Oh, my.
Saying he committed multiple campaign violations, including failing to disclose money he paid to a Hollywood star for a campaign appearance. NBC Bay Area's Damon Trujillo is in San Jose where the alleged violations took place.
Who did he pay?
I can only imagine.
Evan Lowe ran a spirited campaign for Congress against former San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo as both men battled to replace retiring Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. Liccardo won the congressional seat, but in the process, the Fair Political Practices Commission claims Lowe wasn't playing fair.
And he still lost.
Well, with the way he spent his money, I can see why.
Charging him with failure to comply with state finance laws, 18 total violations, all linked to allegations that Lowe failed to file payment reports for donations he solicited for his nonprofit in a timely manner, and inappropriately used nonprofit funds to pay for a Hollywood star to appear at a campaign event.
Oh, no. Wait, how is this all just a fine?
Yeah, that seems like it should be more than that.
For those alleged violations, the commission fined Lowe $106,000.
Well, he should know better and he should act better if he wants people to have confidence and trust in his ability as a public official and as a leader.
So he was raising money for a nonprofit and using that nonprofit to hire a celebrity to speak at a campaign event.
That sounds like something Sheng Tao would do.
Then he should be, trying to do everything he can to make sure that his actions are transparent and serve the public interest.
The alleged violation that stands out is the appearance of actor Alec Baldwin on behalf of the Lowe campaign.
Wait a minute. He paid Alec Baldwin to stop taping his reality show for 15 minutes to show up to his congressional district and campaign on his behalf?
And it was quite a payday for the Baldwin.
The alleged violation that stands out is the appearance of actor Alec Baldwin on behalf of the Lowe campaign. One appearance was at a fundraiser celebrating the Lunar New Year in San Jose's Little Saigon neighborhood in 2023. The complaint says Lowe told investigators that Baldwin appeared of his own free will.
No, he didn't.
And what's the connection between Alec Baldwin and the Lunar New Year?
Yeah, I'd have a hard time understanding why Alec Baldwin for free would go to the Little Saigon neighborhood of San Jose.
None of this makes any sense.
But the commission says Baldwin was in fact paid a $220,000 speaker's fee for the appearance.
Holy cow, $220,000 to go to a Lunar New Year party for Evan Lowe?
Is Alec Baldwin so popular with Democrats where spending that kind of money makes sense?
Maybe Evan's a big 30 Rock fan.
I guess, but couldn't you get Tracy Morgan for less than that? And Alec Baldwin shot someone in the face.
This is true.
But the commission says Baldwin was in fact paid a $220,000 speaker's fee for the appearance.
So you donate to Evan Lowe's nonprofit, which God knows what that actually was supposed to be for. He gives $220,000 of nonprofit money to Alec Baldwin to show up at a fundraiser for the Lunar New Year. How is this just a fine?
None of this on any level makes any sense. And what's the point of having campaign finance laws if you can get around it this easily?
Well, if you just slap them on the wrist, then we're obviously encouraging this behavior because we see this kind of stuff all the time. This is just the most outrageous, and it involves Alec Baldwin.
$100,000 fine is pretty hefty, but you would think, given what he allegedly did, it would be even more than that.
And that the appearance was coordinated by Lowe's agents.
I think it's sad is really the reality. Here's a promising, relatively young political leader who people had a lot of faith in what he has accomplished.
Do you think there was anybody on the list they reached out to that said no, and then they went to Alec Baldwin, or is Baldwin the first choice?
Oh, I would love to know who else they approached. I bet you they went to Taylor Swift first, and Taylor Swift said it would cost you about $5 million, and they moved on. But I wonder who was number 2 and number 3.
People had a lot of faith in what he has accomplished already in the state legislature and what his potential for the future is.
The report says Lowe also paid Baldwin for a fundraising event at his tech-focused nonprofit.
So he got more than the $220,000.
I wonder if this is a racket that exists out there for celebrities.
The speaking fees for these big political events? Oh, you know it is.
Because you just assume that they believe in the candidate, they support the candidate, and that's why they're there. But if this is a money-making operation, I bet you he's not the only one.
Well, look at Kamala's campaign. When she was going to all those big venues in Texas and all around the country, she would hire these musicians. And they weren't just showing up because they supported the cause. They were being paid to perform there and being paid very well.
Well, and these celebrities have zero standards. Remember when they would get caught going to perform for Muammar Gaddafi's kids at the birthday?
The commission declined to comment today, telling me it is...
But by the way, this also shows the unbelievable corruption of all of these nonprofits that are run by politicians. He has a tech-focused nonprofit that was just funneling money into his campaign. How is that allowed? I mean, Mark Ridley Thomas got raided by the FBI for very similar things when he wired money from his nonprofit to his son's nonprofit through USC.
Well, and this guy ran on the platform of gun control, and he gave $250,000 to a man who shot someone in the face.
The commission declined to comment today, telling me it is still an open case and they're required to take one more vote on the fine during their April 10th meeting before it's finalized. Political watchers say the accusations alone could have a significant impact on Lowe's political future.
Well, he already lost, so he's already a former.
Yeah, maybe he'll go back to the assembly or run for some other office, but he's not going to be a member of Congress. There are no term limits for that job, so Sam Liccardo is going to be there till he drops dead.
And this really raises questions now about his ability to lead in any capacity.
And the attorney for Evan Lowe has not returned several messages for comment. Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
There you go. Evan Lowe getting fined $100,000 for using his nonprofit to spend over $200,000 to hire Alec Baldwin to go to a Lunar New Year party for his campaign.
You notice no one from the news reached out to Alec Baldwin because they need to get yelled at by him like they need a hole in the head.
Well, they're also worried that if they call the house, Hilaria picks up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that can't be fun. Or maybe one of the Baldwinitos. We've got 2 more hours coming up on the John Phillips Show. The Fix California Hour is next. Don't you go anywhere.